At noon, Governor Mike Parson just announcing literally within the last maybe 10 to 15 minutes that he has publicly posted an application for St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner's replacement. That application will be closing in just 5 days on the afternoon of May 15th. Applicants must be able to take over on June 1st, so not a lot of time in between then. As that decision looms, Gardner and Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey continue to duke it out despite her announcing her resignation. We know Governor Parson met with Mayor Tashara Jones and several other leaders earlier this week to talk about crime and finding a candidate who values law and order and someone who really represents the community. Well, Gardner's last day per her office is June 1st. Regardless of her decision to resign, the AG is continuing his quo warranto proceeding. He wants her to resign immediately and swear that she would never run again. Well, her attorneys, however, are turning the tables on this. She claims that Bailey is wasting your tax dollars. Gardner wants him to testify under oath in a sworn deposition, and she is requesting a number of documents, including his timesheets and his communications. So she set the date of his deposition, of Bailey's deposition, for one day before hers. The AG's office responded in a statement saying this here, quote, "This is just a last-minute political stunt from the inept circuit attorney as we force her out of office," end quote. Well, all this happening while a contempt of court proceeding against Gardner is still set for a hearing at the end of this month, so at the end of May, which stems from her office not showing to trial in the case of an 11-year-old being shot. We'll be watching how all of this unfolds and updating you here on News 4 and on our KMOV News app.